oh, isn't this great? Devastating the American economy and devastating the American way of life, devastating our national security for fake hummingbirds and fake unicorns because they want to say they're doing something for the environment when they're not doing crap for the environment. Literally. You could ban every single combustion engine in America and you're not going to dent CO2 production while we destroy our way of life and destroy our economy. So America, welcome to the world of the Democratic Party. Plug your car in, use up your entire electricity bill that you use for your air conditioning unit to run your battery-powered car. Oh, $60,000, $70,000. Why can't you just go buy a Tesla, the Secretary of Energy says. Completely out of touch with the average hardworking American. Be right back. But that's what we're dealing with. But that's not all. Today, my colleagues on my side of the aisle, 22 of them in the United States Senate, voted for the continuing resolution. They voted for it, they will say, because, oh no, the government funding will expire tomorrow and we might have a government shutdown. You can hear all of the people in America crying big crocodile tears over the possibility that the federal government might not have its lights on Saturday morning. But let's actually talk about what's really going on. That CR that 22 Republican members of the Senate voted for contains $17 billion in emergency funding, unpaid for, another blank check. That same CR will expire in December, on December 16th, in a lame duck Congress, which my colleagues on this side of the aisle know full well means it empowers my colleagues on that side of the aisle to continue to stick it to the American people with their radical leftist policies, undermining their way of life. That continuing resolution has nothing in it to secure the border of the United States when our border is wide open and fentanyl is pouring in, killing Americans. 72,000 dead Americans last year from opioid, fentanyl-related poisonings directly coming in at the hands of cartels coming from China. That is more than every American who died in the Vietnam War. Are we going to put a great big memorial out there for all of those 72,000? What about the year before? What about this year? What about the 4 people in Hays County that I represent in Texas, the 4 kids who died from fentanyl poisoning? Because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to turn a blind eye to cartels exploiting our border for the endangerment of Americans. And that's the truth. Americans are dead because of the policies of this administration failing to secure the border of the United States, and they know it. And migrants are dead. Migrants' bodies are piling up in South Texas by the hundreds. 53 cooked in a tractor trailer in San Antonio, which I represent. 53 human beings cooked in the false name of compassion, while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle walk around going, look at me. I love brown people. I love immigrants. Bull. It's a lie. And my colleagues need to wake up, because I can promise you that the brown people, not my terminology, by the way, in South Texas are fed up of being exploited, abused, and used for political purposes. While my colleagues like to say, oh, well, Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott sent some people to D.C., to Martha's Vineyard. Well, welcome to the party. The country is now alerted. These were volunteers who said, yeah, I'll take a ride to D.C. 50 people in Martha's Vineyard, 53 dead migrants in a tractor trailer in San Antonio. Just last night, the mayor of Uvalde, Texas, yes, that Uvalde, Texas, called up. There was a pickup truck with 10 immigrants in the truck that T-boned into a tractor trailer intersection, 2 of them dead, 2 in the hospital. Every stinking day this is happening. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle turn a blind eye. That's the reality of our border. But this continuing resolution that my Republican colleagues in the United States Senate, 22 of them, were all too happy to support, continues to fund that Department of Homeland Security of an annual budget of $57.5 billion, $8 billion for ICE, even though it was a 70% reduction in removals last year for ICE. Millions in grants each year in that same continuing resolution to non-governmental organizations who are the ones actually transporting people around the United States, effectively subsidizing illegal immigration. This CR empowers the authoritarian bureaucrats targeting Americans. It's not just the Department of Homeland Security leaving our border wide open and exposed, but the FBI to the tune of $10.8 billion to go after former President Trump, to go after parents concerned about schools, to go after a pro-lifer father, an IRS of $12.6 billion. We just gave them another $80 billion. But no, we just funded a CR that an annual appropriation of $12 billion. Oh, you think that's good enough? How about NIH, $45 billion, after NIH has been basically screwing the American people for the last 2.5 years with their nonsense spewing out about COVID, resulting in our children being set back a generation, shoved to the corner of classrooms, forced to wear masks, unable to have proper speech. Also, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle can run around wearing masks and scaring the bejesus out of the American people. $45 billion. My Republican colleagues in the Senate said, sure, let's keep giving them more money. What will my colleagues on my side of the aisle do tomorrow? I hope they'll oppose it. How about Pfizer and Moderna, who face no liability, made $93 billion in 2022. $93 billion. Pfizer and Moderna, because the government was cramming shots into people's arms and then forcing our men and women in uniform to lose their job and get fired if they dare not take a shot, which the current CDC says, you know what, doesn't even help with transmission. What the hell kind of a country are we living in? This isn't freedom. And we're funding it. And Republicans are complicit. NIAID, $6.3 billion, run by the COVID tyrant-in-chief, Dr. Fauci. CDC, $8.5 billion, colluded with the teachers' unions to impose the lockdowns. The World Health Organization, $122 million in this annual funding just approved. Already got $280 million under the Democrats' COVID relief bill. They pushed a completely unfounded COVID narrative and partnered with the Chinese communists to cover up the role in the COVID origins. This we know. The Department of Defense and all of their glory, and don't say that over here on my side of the aisle, because we got to rush in and we got to give the money for the Department of Defense without any accountability, by the way, for how about forcing troops out with their tyrannical COVID-19 vaccine mandates, set to discharge over 75,000 active service members for daring to say no to a vaccine that doesn't even help with transmissibility. How about a woke military and foreign policy? The DOD won't admit China is a greater threat than climate change, according to the leadership. They're preoccupied with diversity training, constructing training centers with mixed-sex restrooms and locker rooms and showers. The Air Force is going to spend $66 million for one in San Antonio, which I represent. $56 billion for the Department of State and Foreign Operations budget, for U.S. embassies to fly Pride and BLM flags, add unspecified X-gender designations to passports. $15 million for the State Department's Global Equality Fund, sending tax dollars to LGBTQI whatever persons around the world. Empowers Biden's administration's anti-American, anti-biology ideology. $39 million for HHS Office of Civil Rights, promoting gender transition surgeries for kids. $76 billion obviously goes to the Department of Education, where we subsidize schools failing our kids, shoving them into the corners of classrooms, making them wear masks, and rewarding teachers filling their minds with anti-American teachings under critical race theory. Even in my own school, a city that I represent in San Antonio, Northside ISD, forced a radical equity exercise dividing people by their hair color. $2 billion for the Student Aid Administration, carrying out the Biden's $400 billion student loan giveaway. $525 million for the public broadcasting, HHS, $94 million for diversity training, $64 million for the Office of Minority Health, $1.1 million for the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity in HHS. Energy, $100 million for environmental justice, quote unquote. The EPA used this to create a new Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. In the Department of the EPA, $20 million for the Department of Energy's Office of Impact and Diversity. $885 million for the Department of Education programs that fund colleges based solely on students' race and ethnicity. $235 million for federal apprenticeship program that includes grants to equity intermediaries to hire CRT indoctrination consultants. How about the United Nations Population Fund, praising China's abusive population control programs? How about UN Women, which can't even define women? What's a woman? Promotes trans and intersex athletes. Climate, $15 million for the UN climate agencies, $149 million for the Global Environment Facility, $125 million for the World Bank's Clean Technology Fund. And my Republican colleagues in the Senate, the 22 who voted for it, and of course all the Democrats for the most part, passed this through to get it to a lame duck in December to then allow for even more. That's what we're funding. And at some point you would think that we'd wake up on a bipartisan basis, or Lord willing, at least my side of the aisle, that we actually have the power of the purse. And we're actually supposed to use it. Instead of giving massive blank checks to an administration that is at war with the American people on a daily basis. When the founders gave us this government, they knew that they didn't want to empower an executive with unfettered power. Yet that's what we do every day in this chamber. That's what the so-called People's House of the United States does every single day.